Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm trying not to say hi guys anymore, and it's such an instinctive thing for me to say, but I'm trying really hard not to say hi guys and to be a bit more inclusive. So hey, welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here. Today's video is trying to kind of open up the conversation around moving on from people. It's relationship based. Today I wanted to talk about the difference between what people think it means to be over someone and what that looks like, and what being over someone actually looks like. For those of you that don't know, I've been single now for a few years. There's a few things that always seem to come up, so I wanted to talk about them. So that is what we're talking about today. So it seems to me that when you break up with someone, and obviously it depends on how that happened and what's going on, but it seems to me like there's a lot of focus on finding someone else. And sometimes that's focus that we have ourselves, like we think that we want that validation, we want someone new in our lives. Maybe we've already met someone new. Maybe we are just enjoying being single, so it's quite fun to date and to meet people. Or maybe there's pressure from friends where people are like, oh, you're not with that person anymore, but I know someone that you might get on with. Or there seems to be this kind of freedom, I guess. The only way I can think of relating it is like, if anyone in the UK has ever driven into Wales, and this is the same on all toll bridges, and you're like all in a row and you pay the toll and then it's like ga, 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 ga. And that seems to me to be what happens when a relationship breaks down. You know, you do want to go out, you do want to talk to people, you want to meet new people, and also other people want you to do that too. So I remember when a family member's marriage broke down, and I would check in with her and ask how she was doing. And one of the questions I would ask would be, oh, so, you know, how's dating? Have you met anyone yet? And I've noticed this come up when friends and family members and just general people in my life, people that I might, I don't know, see at the gym. I haven't been to the gym in months, but you know, people that I might see like around, they would ask me, you know, oh, have you met anyone yet? Like there is this expectation that you will meet someone new. And I think that people think that when you have met someone new, you've moved on, you're over it because you're with someone new. And that's the kind of generalization that I wanted to look at and talk about a bit more in this video, because that is so unbelievably wrong. I can't even tell you. Someone being in another relationship is not indicative of them being over the person they were with previously, them having dealt with it whatsoever, them having moved on. But we seem to feel like, oh, well, you've had that bit, that's gone. Oh, and now you're with someone new, so you must be over that. And that's not what, that's not it. That's not it. And having been single for a while now, there is definitely this thing that happens, and I don't know if it happens so much towards guys, but definitely towards women, where there is this reassurance that you will meet someone. So if you haven't met someone, don't worry, you will meet someone. And it drives me crazy. But people do tend to think that that's a goal, that you want to be in a relationship with someone. And I'm not dismissive of that. I'm not dismissive of wanting to share your life with someone at all. But I do think that there is an issue when you get into, don't worry, someone will come along. And it's almost to the point where it's like, someone will have you, which is so negative. And I'm sure that it isn't meant that way, but that's how it comes across a lot of the time. I'm guilty of it too. Like, I have done this, and I didn't realise quite how damaging that is in a way, because what we don't ask is, we don't ask that person how they're feeling. We don't ask them if they're happy. We don't ask all of those supportive questions where we could actually be there for them. We just kind of go, oh, how are you doing? Have you met someone new? Oh, I'm sure you will, you know? And we miss the opportunity to actually be there for people in a very real way. And the other thing that as a society, I think we tend to think that it's been a certain period of time, so you should be over that now. And the indicator of whether or not you're over it is if you're with someone new. And if you're not with someone new, then like I said, there's pressure that you should be, but it's okay because someone will come along. And I think as well, because that focus tends to be on, are you dating? Have you met anyone? Are you talking to anyone? Are you on dating apps? Lots of those types of questions. There is a misunderstanding about how long it takes to get over people and how that works. And it's very, very different for everyone. Some people, manage things very quickly and move on very quickly and get into a new relationship. And some people stay single for longer and process things on their own. There's different ways that you can manage that. If you haven't seen my previous video on the loss cycle, I will put a little card thingy so I can link it here, and then you can go and have a look at it. But basically, the loss of a relationship is exactly the same as the grieving process. And that isn't something that is resolved within a few months. It depends on how long you're with someone and what kind of level the feelings were, and it depends on the individual relationship. But if it was a significant relationship, it's going to take a significant time. And I've actually heard someone say that it takes something like half of the length of your relationship to actually process getting over it. You can't really define what getting over it looks like. I've had friends who have been 2 years down the line, who are really, really happy in a new relationship with a new partner, but who still at times miss certain things or certain elements, or maybe have regrets, or maybe still processing things. And because we don't talk about that as a society, none of that they feel is valid, so they hold it in and they don't talk to anyone about it, because they feel like, well, it's been 2 years and I should be over it, and I have a new partner, so I shouldn't bring this up. And there's lots of shoulds and shouldn'ts that come into the conversation, and I'm a firm believer that when shoulds and shouldn'ts come into the conversation, that's when we're being inauthentic, because regardless of whether something should or shouldn't be happening, you should or shouldn't be feeling a certain way, you are, and that's what's going on, and deal with the reality, not with what you think you should or shouldn't be doing. And there are some people that will jump straight into a new relationship, and there are some people that will take a lot longer. I'm not saying that either of those is good or bad than the other. However you want to live your life ultimately is entirely up to you. What I would say is that sometimes that can be problematic, because I see a lot of relationships where they're not that supportive. Sometimes it's almost like you're expected to be so over your past that it doesn't come into your present, and there is a misunderstanding when actually your past will constantly come into your present until you've dealt with it. Being in a relationship with someone who can understand that you are still processing stuff and support you through that is going to make your relationship so much stronger than if you get into a relationship with someone and there's stuff that you can't talk about. Again, I've had situations with friends where they've had quite a big life change. They've had a long-term relationship that has broken down, and they're processing so much more than just the loss of that person. In my own situation, it was the loss of my family unit, the loss of my marriage, the loss of seeing my children every day. Like, there's so much more than just not seeing that one person and processing the loss of that person. There's many, many elements to it. And I still struggle now after 2.5 years. I struggle with the element of the separated parenting that obviously comes from the loss of that relationship. Now, that's not me wanting to return to that relationship in any way. It's just saying that I don't see my kids every day. I don't wake up with my children every day. And sometimes I find that really, really hard. That is an element of still processing and coming to terms with how my life is now. And to be able to be around people who can understand that me saying I miss my children every day or I miss my family unit doesn't mean that I want to go back to that relationship. It just means I'm processing an element of it. And that is a skill that comes in with emotional intelligence. But quite often I see partnerships where they don't want to hear you talk about your ex. There is this thing where if you're on dating apps, you can go through and it'd be like, no crazy exes. And actually, when you get to kind of this age, when you're like 30 and you're dating, most people have got some exes. Most people have got some baggage. They've got stuff going on. Relationships can be a really safe space for you to be able to heal together. And if you have someone who's quite close to that, bearing in mind you've got into a relationship quite quickly after that loss and you are still going to be processing it, I think that's when you're going to run into problems, because ultimately all you're going to do is the person that you are closest to, your partner, you're not going to be able to be open with them about the stuff that you're going through, and they're not going to be able to support you. And a lot of that will be a mixture of feeling like you can't talk to them, or feeling like they don't want to hear it, and also maybe they don't want to hear it because they have other stuff going on for them in their past. And maybe together you could break that down and work that out and assist each other to move forwards together and be stronger together, because you're helping each other through that, if that makes sense. The other thing that I've noticed is some people do tend to get into a relationship quite quickly to kind of fill a hole in their life. So they lose someone and there's a gap that they want to fill. And sometimes that can be as like a distraction. It can be like, okay, I have all this stuff going on, but I can have these fun times. You know, people date a lot for that reason. I did that. I dated a lot. I was very, very social for kind of 6 months to a year. I spent a lot of time meeting new people, and it was purely as a distraction from managing and processing that loss, that grief, and everything else that comes. And like, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to make the time to also process through that loss, because otherwise it's still gonna be working through, and it will hit you at the strangest moments. I'm not saying that you need to just hole up in a room somewhere and be like, I am dealing with this and I'm not meeting anyone or doing anything, but I'm just saying that you have to allow yourself to process stuff. You can't just put it off, you can't just pretend it doesn't exist, because otherwise later on down the line it will bite you in the ass, basically. So to kind of like conclude on what this conversation is, there is a misconception that when you meet someone new and you are in a partnership again, you are then over the previous loss. That is not always the case. The getting over of someone is not something that can ever be defined. Only you can define when you are like over someone, and there is no set visual on what that looks like, whether you are with someone, whether you are not, whether you are still friends or able to be friends. That's not an indicator. You know, there is absolutely no indicator whatsoever. I would say that from a personal point of view, I believe that when you can kind of look back on your life and there's no hatred, there's no real sadness, and I'm saying this in the majority of the time because it may still pop up occasionally, but there is just an understanding of what you went through and have experienced, and you can look back on that without all of the emotion attached to it. I would say that that is more indicative of being over someone, in the same way that if you have suffered a loss in your life, it's being able to have fond memories and look back on that person's influence in your life without being overcome with upset or anger or denial that that thing has happened. That's kind of how I would define being over someone. There is this view, and this is, you know, I've heard lots of women talk about this, there is this view that you are incomplete without a partner, that the goal is to get a partner, have children, you know, stay together, family unit, all together kind of thing. And actually now in society there are so many more blended families, which is awesome, and it's becoming less the norm for that. But this idea that as a woman you need to have a partner to be whole is so flawed, I can't even begin. And I would say that coming to that mentality of feeling like you are whole, you are complete exactly as you are, without someone to fill a gap that may have been left, because there is no gap. I would say, again, that's probably more indicative of being over someone than having someone else to plug the gap. It kind of perpetuates the idea that people are replaceable in people's lives, and actually they're not. People are people, and people have different influences in your life. You know, you might have a relationship with someone that has a certain impact or whatever, but you can't just pick someone else out to replace that person. That's not how it works. That person is a totally new person that will have different needs, different boundaries. It'll be a very different relationship, which it should be. Anyway, that's just my rambly thoughts today. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.